decades, mainstream pop psychology has sold you a very dangerous lie. They told you that to deal with a toxic person, a narcissist, a sociopath, or a chronic manipulator, you need to stand your ground. You need to communicate your feelings. You need to set firm vocal boundaries and explain exactly how their actions hurt you. That is exactly what they want you to do. When you argue, when you cry, when you defend yourself, you are handing them the remote control to your nervous system. In the realm of behavioral science, this is known as a reinforcement loop. Toxic individuals do not process human interaction the way a healthy brain does. They do not seek connection, they seek regulation. They are deeply dysregulated on the inside, carrying a perpetual hollow anxiety. To soothe themselves, they must provoke a reaction in you. When they insult you and you snap back in anger, their brain receives a massive soothing hit of dopamine. When they cross a boundary and you break down in tears, they feel powerful, in control, and safe. Your emotional distress is their psychological currency. In clinical terms, this is called narcissistic supply. It is a biological addiction. But what happens when you cut the supply? What happens when you give them nothing? When you remove the emotional payoff, you introduce them to the void. And the void is terrifying. By utilizing the silent behaviors we are about to decode, you stop participating in their operant conditioning. You become an immovable object. But be warned, the moment you implement this, you will trigger a highly volatile psychological phenomenon known as the Extinction Burst. An extinction burst occurs when a behavior that previously yielded a reward suddenly stops working. If you put a coin in a vending machine and nothing comes out, you don't just walk away calmly. You hit the machine, you shake it, you escalate. When you go silent, the toxic person will escalate. They will try harder to provoke you. They will say the most vicious things imaginable. They will fabricate crises. They are shaking the vending machine. You must anticipate this, because if you break your silence during the extinction burst, you teach them that their escalated abuse is exactly what it takes to break you. But if you hold the line, if you remain in the void, the behavior dies, and their fear of you begins. The first silent behavior is the foundation of your new psychological armor. It is called affective neutrality. In the clinical world, affect refers to the outward display of emotion. Affective flattening is typically a symptom seen in certain psychological conditions where a person shows zero emotional reactivity. But today, we are weaponizing it. We are calling it the Blank Slate Protocol. Toxic people are hypervigilant observers. They have spent their lives studying human weakness. When they speak to you, they are rapidly scanning your face for micro-expressions. They are looking for the slight tightening of your jaw, the darting of your eyes, the subtle shift in your breathing, or the defensive rise in the pitch of your voice. These micro-expressions tell them, my manipulation is working, I am inside their head. Affective neutrality means stripping your physical and vocal presence of all data. Imagine a toxic co-worker attempting to humiliate you in a meeting, or a narcissistic partner hurling a baseless accusation at you. Your instinct is visceral. Adrenaline floods your system, cortisol spikes, and you want to defend your reality. Instead, you do this. You consciously drop your shoulders. You unclench your jaw. You let your facial muscles go completely slack. You do not scowl. A smirk is still a reaction. It signals superiority, which is an emotion they can fight against. You must give them a dead, flat line. When you must speak, your voice must be utterly devoid of music. No inflection, no defensive urgency, no rising pitch at the end of your sentences. If they say, "You are the most selfish person I've ever met, you ruin everything," your response is not a defense. Your response is to look at them with the mild, detached interest of a scientist observing a moderately interesting bug and say in a flat, monotone voice, "Okay, I hear you." That is your perspective. These are not agreements. They are linguistic brick walls. By refusing to match their emotional frequency, you deny them conversational entertainment. You are refusing to dance to their rhythm. Why does this make them fear you? Because toxic people rely on the illusion that they are gods of their own reality, capable of controlling the emotional weather of everyone around them. When you execute the Blank Slate Protocol, you present them with a mirror of their own powerlessness. Their brain registers an error code. Why aren't they scared? Why aren't they fighting back? What do they know that I don't? You have become a psychological black hole. Their attacks enter, and absolutely nothing escapes. The energy they expend trying to break you is entirely wasted, leaving them exhausted, dysregulated, and deeply unsettled by your impenetrable calm. But staying entirely blank is only the first step. To truly dismantle their reality, you must take control of time itself. Human beings are biological metronomes. From the moment we are born, our nervous systems are hardwired for a phenomenon called conversational entertainment. When two people interact, they naturally and unconsciously synchronize their speaking rate, their breathing patterns, and their reaction times. It is the invisible rhythm of social survival. Toxic individuals weaponize this biological rhythm. Think about the last time a manipulator backed you into a corner. Did they give you time to think? No. They manufactured artificial urgency. They hit you with a barrage of accusations, guilt trips, or demands rapid fire. In behavioral science, overwhelming the target with volume and speed is a tactic designed to bypass your prefrontal cortex, the logical center of your brain, and force your amygdala into a state of fight or flight. They dictate the tempo, and as long as they control the tempo, they control you. Behavior number 2 is asynchronous pacing. It is the conscious, deliberate disruption of conversational entertainment. Here is exactly how you execute it. The next time a toxic person asks you a loaded question, hurls an insult, or demands an immediate answer, you do not respond. Not immediately. You look at them and you count to 4 in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 seconds in the middle of a heated conversation feels like an eternity. It creates a massive, suffocating vacuum of dead air, and in that dead air, their artificial urgency completely collapses. Why does this terrify them? Because toxic people rely on momentum. Their manipulations are a house of cards that require constant, rapid reinforcement to stay standing. When you pause for 4 seconds, you are visually and audibly demonstrating that their urgency does not apply to you. You are operating on your own timeline. You have become asynchronous. When you finally do answer, you speak at half your normal speed with a slightly lower vocal register. They speed up, you slow down. They rush, you wait. By breaking the rhythm, you shatter their illusion of control. You force them to sit in the uncomfortable silence of their own toxic behavior. But what happens when slowing down isn't enough? What happens when their urgency escalates into outright aggressive hostility? You must break the fundamental laws of human physics. In psychology, there is a core principle known as interpersonal complementarity theory. It dictates that human behaviors naturally draw out their predictable opposites or matches. Hostility breeds hostility. Dominance invites submission. Anxiety triggers reassurance. When a toxic person comes at you with aggressive, dominating energy, your biological instinct gives you 2 choices. You either rise up and scream back, matching their hostility, or you shrink down, apologize, and cower, submitting to their dominance. Both reactions are standard complementary behaviors. Both reactions feed the manipulator exactly what they want. They know the script. They wrote the script. Behavior number 3 is tearing the script to shreds. It is called radical non-complementary behavior. This behavior requires immense discipline. It means responding to a psychological stimulus with the exact opposite energy that biology and social norms dictate. It is deeply unsettling to witness, and even more terrifying to experience. If they raise their voice to a scream, you do not just stay calm. You drop your voice to a near whisper. If they lean aggressively into your physical space, you do not push back, and you do not cower. You lean back in your chair, cross your legs, and physically relax your posture, as if you are watching a slightly boring television show. Let's look at the behavioral science of why this destroys a manipulator's confidence. The human brain is a prediction machine. It uses predictive coding to anticipate the results of an action. When a narcissist screams, their brain predicts fear or anger. When you deliver a whisper and a relaxed posture instead, their brain registers a massive prediction error. You are short-circuiting their cognitive map. Because your reaction does not make sense to them, they instantly feel unsafe. Their subconscious mind screams, "Why are they so relaxed? Are they not afraid of me? Do they have power over me that I don't know about?" By refusing to complement their behavior, their rage hits a brick wall and has nowhere to go but back onto themselves. They are left screaming at a person who looks like they are waiting for a bus. The contrast makes the toxic person look and feel entirely unhinged, foolish, and deeply inadequate. You have not fought them, you have simply allowed them to defeat themselves with their own momentum. But mastering their rhythm and neutralizing their energy is only half the battle. Toxic people don't just feed on your reactions, they feed on your data, your history, your fears, your preferences, and your plans. To become truly untouchable, you must become an informational void. You must learn the dark art of the information black hole. Mainstream advice often tells you to use the grey rock method, making yourself as boring and unresponsive as a literal rock. But grey rock is a defensive posture. It implies you are hiding. Behavior number 4 is not defensive. It is a highly offensive tactical maneuver known as asymmetric information warfare. We call it the information black hole. Toxic individuals, especially those with dark triad traits, are relentless data miners. They do not have conversations with you, they conduct interrogations disguised as small talk. They are constantly gathering intel. What are you stressed about? What are your dreams? What did you do this weekend? Who are you angry with? They gather this data because human vulnerability is the raw material they use to manufacture manipulation. If they know your insecurities, they know exactly where to aim the knife. If they know your desires, they know exactly what to dangle in front of you. To make them fear you, you must systematically starve them of data. You must create an absolute asymmetry in the flow of information. Here is what the information black hole looks like in practice. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying your decisions. You stop sharing your preferences, your minor inconveniences, and your future plans. When they ask, "What did you do this weekend?" you do not say, "Oh, I stayed in, I was feeling a bit tired and just watched some movies." That is 3 pieces of data: your location, your energy level, and your activity. Instead, you look at them and say, "It was quiet, do not elaborate, let the silence hang." By offering 0 new data points, you create a cognitive vacuum. Toxic people are terrified of the unknown because the unknown cannot be controlled. When you become an information black hole, they realize they are flying blind. They have no ammunition to use against you tomorrow, and they have no leverage to pull today. They are forced to interact with a shadow. But withholding words is not enough. You must also weaponize the most powerful non-verbal tool in human biology. In the animal kingdom, sustained, unblinking eye contact precedes one of 2 things: mating or murder. It is the universal biological signal for absolute, undivided focus. In behavioral psychology, there is a phenomenon known as the Hawthorne effect. It dictates that individuals significantly alter their behavior when they know they are being observed. We are going to apply the Hawthorne effect directly to the narcissist's ego. When a manipulator is spinning a lie, gaslighting you, or throwing a theatrical tantrum, they are putting on a performance, and every performance requires an audience. Subconsciously, they expect you to play your part, to nod, to look confused, to look away in discomfort, or to show verbal agreement with tiny filler words like or yeah. Behavior number 5 is the surgical removal of all audience participation. It is the unblinking observation. When they begin their manipulation, you do not interrupt. You simply lock eyes with them. You maintain 80 to 90% eye contact, significantly more than the normal social baseline. You do not nod. You do not agree. You do not frown. You simply watch them. You study their face with the detached, analytical curiosity of a biologist watching a rat navigate a maze. This specific type of eye contact is neither aggressive nor submissive. It is evaluative. It sends a subconscious, terrifying message directly to their primitive brain. I see exactly what you are doing. I am not falling for it. And I am documenting every single word. Without your nods and filler words to lubricate the conversation, their lies will suddenly feel heavy and awkward in their own mouth. The silence will become deafening. They will begin to stumble over their words. They will over-explain. They will try to backpedal. Because beneath their mask of superiority, toxic people harbor a deep, fragile insecurity. By simply observing them without reacting, you reflect their absurdity back onto them. You strip away their power and reduce them to a specimen under a microscope. And once you have stripped them of their data and dismantled their performance, you must ensure they never ever feel comfortable around you again. You must master the art of being predictably unpredictable. In the mid-20th century, behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered something terrifying about the mammalian brain. He found that if you reward a rat every single time it presses a lever, it learns the behavior. But if you reward the rat randomly, sometimes it gets food, sometimes it gets nothing. The rat becomes absolutely obsessed. It will press the lever until it collapses from exhaustion. This is called a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. It is the exact neurological mechanism that makes gambling so profoundly addictive. And toxic people use it on you every single day. They are unpredictably cruel and unpredictably kind. This keeps your nervous system in a perpetual state of hypervigilance, constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. You become addicted to analyzing their mood, trying to predict the weather of their mind. Behavior number 6 flips this entire biological mechanism back onto them. It is called unpredictable predictability. To make a manipulator fear you, you must become relentlessly predictable in your boundaries. You will never accept abuse. You will never engage in screaming matches, but entirely unpredictable in your presence. If they start a toxic cycle, they already have a mental map of your defense mechanisms. They expect you to argue, or if they know you use the grey rock method, they expect you to go silent and stare at the floor, shatter their map. Sometimes, when they try to provoke you, you simply hold unblinking eye contact for 10 seconds before walking away. Other times, you might suddenly pick up a book and start reading in the middle of their rant, completely ignoring them. Sometimes, you give a flat, monotone, one-word answer. And sometimes, you leave the room the exact second they raise their voice, without a single word of warning. By randomizing how you disengage, you force them into a state of hypervigilance. They no longer know which lever to pull. They can never get comfortable around you because your lack of reaction is an ever-shifting puzzle they cannot solve. They become the rat in the cage, exhausting themselves trying to figure you out. And just when their mind is spinning, desperately trying to regain a foothold in the conversation, you introduce the mirror. Narcissists and manipulators thrive in a linguistic fog. They use word salad, a confusing, contradictory stream of accusations, guilt trips, and gaslighting to overwhelm your cognitive processing. They want you so busy defending yourself against the details that you miss the sheer absurdity of their core argument. Behavior number 7 clears the fog instantly. It is called the mirror pause. This is rooted in a psychological concept called cognitive dissonance, the extreme mental discomfort a person feels when their beliefs or behaviors directly contradict reality. Toxic people avoid cognitive dissonance at all costs. They build massive delusions to protect their ego from the reality of their own toxic behavior. Your job is to force them to look at it. Here is the exact protocol. When a toxic person unleashes a wildly manipulative or irrational statement, you do not defend yourself. You do not explain why they are wrong. You let 3 seconds of dead, silent air pass. Then, in your flattest, most emotionless blank slate voice, you repeat their exact words back to them slowly, framing it as a point of clarification. So, just so I understand, you are saying that because I did not answer my phone while I was driving, I am actively trying to ruin your life. Is that correct? Let me make sure I have this right. You are screaming at me in the middle of a restaurant because I ordered a coffee you didn't approve of. Did I hear that accurately? Do not add sarcasm. Do not add anger. The power of the mirror pause relies entirely on your clinical detached delivery. You are simply holding up a high-definition audio recording of their own insanity and asking them to verify it. When you repeat their manipulation back to them in the cold light of day, you strip away the emotional fog. You force their brain into massive cognitive dissonance. They are suddenly confronted with how unhinged, controlling, or pathetic they sound. Most toxic people will immediately backtrack, stutter, or try to change the subject, because the reality of their own words is too humiliating to defend. You have trapped them in their own trap. But psychological maneuvering is only effective if your physical environment reflects it. To truly isolate a toxic person and make them fear your presence, you must master the geometry of space. In the 1960s, cultural researcher Edward T. Hall pioneered the study of proxemics, the scientific study of how humans use physical space to communicate power, intimacy, and threat. Hall discovered that we all carry invisible protective force fields around our bodies. Toxic people are spatial predators. They use proxemics as a weapon. They will stand in your doorway so you cannot leave. They will follow you from room to room when you try to disengage. They will invade your intimate zone, the 18 inches immediately surrounding your body, to trigger your sympathetic nervous system and flood your brain with panic-inducing adrenaline. For years, therapists have told you to set verbal boundaries. To say, "Please step back," or "I need you to lower your voice or I'm going to leave." Here is the dark truth about manipulators. To them, a verbal boundary is not a wall. It is an invitation to negotiate. Behavior number 8 is boundary concretization. You must stop speaking your boundaries and start physicalizing them. When a toxic person violates your space or begins a manipulative loop, you do not explain that you are uncomfortable. You do not ask for permission to end the conversation. You execute a physical boundary. If they are standing too close, you do not ask them to step back. You silently take 2 large steps backward, maintaining your unblinking observation. If they follow you into a room to continue an argument, you do not say, "Leave me alone." You pivot your physical torso 180 degrees away from them, breaking all visual contact, and you walk out the door. If they are blocking the door, you sit down, pull out your phone, and completely ignore their existence until they move. You are removing the negotiation. By concretizing your boundary in physical space, you are signaling absolute, unyielding authority over your own geometry. You are showing them that they do not exist in a reality where they can trap you. When you withdraw your physical presence without a word of justification, you trigger a primal fear of abandonment in the toxic brain. But physical withdrawal is only the precursor to a much deeper, more devastating psychological withdrawal. At the core of human motivation is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Near the top of this pyramid is the need for esteem, the desire for respect, status, recognition, and validation. In a psychologically healthy person, esteem is generated internally. But in individuals with dark triad traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, the internal esteem generator is completely ruptured. They have a psychological black hole where their self-worth should be. To survive, they must extract validation from the outside world, and they do this by forcing you into one of 2 roles, the intimidated victim or the amazed admirer. They either need you to fear their wrath or worship their brilliance. Behavior number 9 is surgically cutting off this life support. It is the Withheld Validation Matrix. To execute this, you must become an active behavioral profiler. You must identify exactly what kind of validation the toxic person is trying to extract from you at any given moment. Are they bragging about their wealth, their intelligence, or how much better they are than a mutual acquaintance? They are seeking admiration validation. Are they slamming cupboards, giving you the silent treatment, or making subtle threat? They are seeking fear validation. Once you identify the specific supply they are hunting for, you deliver a devastating blow. Profound, absolute indifference. If they are bragging and expecting you to be impressed, you do not argue and you do not act amazed. You look at them with your blank slate expression, nod once and say, interesting. Then you immediately change the subject to something incredibly mundane, like the weather or a grocery list. If they are trying to intimidate you with passive-aggressive anger, you do not ask them what is wrong. You do not tiptoe around them to appease their mood. You happily and calmly go about your day as if their dark cloud is entirely invisible to you. Being unimpressed is the kryptonite of the toxic mind. When you withhold the exact emotional reaction they spent their energy trying to manufacture, they experience a psychological freefall. You are communicating, without using a single word, that they are not special. They are not fearsome. They are fundamentally irrelevant to your emotional state. This kind of invalidation creates a massive wound to their ego, and a wounded ego will desperately try to regain its status by creating a dramatic, high-stakes spectacle. When that happens, you must deploy the ultimate insult to a manipulator's theatrical performance. In the hierarchy of human emotions, we often believe that the opposite of love is hate. But behavioral science dictates something different. Hate is an active emotion. It requires investment, energy, and focus. If a toxic person can make you hate them, they still own real estate in your mind. The true, devastating opposite of love and the opposite of fear is apathy. Toxic individuals, specifically those with grandiose narcissistic traits, view life as a movie where they are the absolute center of the universe. They either want to be your savior or your monster. Both roles require them to be deeply, intensely important to you. Behavior number 10 is the ultimate weapon of emotional invalidation, micro-expressions of boredom. When a toxic person escalates a situation, when they launch into a dramatic monologue about how they have been wronged, or when they attempt to terrify you with a sudden outburst of rage, your biological instinct is to match their intensity, to look shocked, to look intimidated, to engage. Instead, you introduce the most insulting physical response in the human repertoire. Genuine, unmistakable boredom. Here is the exact biological sequence. While they are escalating, you do not interrupt. You let them speak, but your body language completely deflates. You break your unblinking observation for just a moment to look at your watch or check your fingernails. You let your eyes glaze over slightly, focusing on a spot on the wall just behind their head. And most devastatingly, you let out a slow, quiet, completely involuntary sigh. Why does this break them? Because a micro-expression of boredom communicates a devastating psychological truth. You are not a threat. You are a nuisance. When a manipulator realizes they cannot even command enough respect to make you angry, their illusion of omnipotence shatters. You have demoted them from terrifying monster to annoying background noise. The cognitive dissonance this creates is so painful, so humiliating to their ego, that their brain will instinctively force them to retreat to protect whatever fragile self-worth they have left. But breaking their ego in the moment is only a temporary victory. To ensure they never attempt to control you again, you must completely sever their illusion of ownership over your future. There is a psychological concept known as the locus of control. It describes how much power a person believes they have over the events in their life. People with an internal locus of control believe their actions dictate their outcomes. People with an external locus of control believe they are at the mercy of outside forces. Toxic people survive by forcing you to adopt an external locus of control. Namely, they want them to be the outside force that dictates your life. Manipulators cultivate a dynamic of forced dependency. They slowly train you to believe that you must consult them, update them, and seek their approval before making any move, no matter how small. If you change a plan without telling them, they punish you with rage or the silent treatment. Behavior number 11 is the permanent severing of this dynamic. It is called the autonomous pivot. The autonomous pivot is the act of making unilateral decisions regarding your own life, your time, and your resources, without consulting them, without explaining your reasoning, and without seeking their approval. You stop asking for permission. You stop providing updates. You simply execute. If they expect you to spend your weekend helping them with a project they fabricated to keep you busy, you do not argue about why you can't do it. You do not offer an excuse about being tired. You simply say, "I'm unavailable this weekend," and you walk out the door. When they inevitably demand to know why, when they try to force you back into the negotiation phase by asking, "What are you doing that is so important?" you deploy the information black hole. "I have other commitments." When you execute an autonomous pivot, you are operating entirely outside their sphere of influence. You are demonstrating absolute, impenetrable self-efficacy. This behavior terrifies a toxic person on a primal level, because it proves that their control was an illusion all along. They realize they have zero veto power over your reality. You are no longer a character in their movie. You have walked off their set entirely. And as they watch you walk away, completely unaffected by their gravity, they will realize something cold and undeniable. They cannot manipulate a ghost, but there is one final behavior. A behavior so profoundly detached, so deeply rooted in psychological permanence, that it acts as the kill switch for any trauma bond. For years, the self-help industry has fed you a toxic brand of optimism. They have told you that everyone is fighting a hard battle, that hurt people, and that with enough empathy, patience, and understanding, you can heal the brokenness inside a manipulator. They told you to look for the good in them. That toxic optimism is the glue that holds a trauma bond together. It keeps you trapped in a cycle of abuse because you are not reacting to the person standing in front of you. You are reacting to the phantom potential of who they could be. Behavior number 12 is the absolute destruction of that phantom. In dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, this is known as radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is the cognitive act of completely abandoning the hope for a different past and entirely surrendering the delusion of a healed future. It is looking at a toxic person and accepting, without anger, without sadness, and without a desire to fix them, that they are fundamentally psychologically dangerous. They are not misunderstood. They are not a puzzle for you to solve. They are a predator, and you are supply. When you execute radical acceptance, you stop asking why. Why did they lie to me again? Why can't they just be normal? Why is a question that keeps you engaged. Why demands an answer, and as long as you are waiting for an answer, they still have power over your mind. You must replace why with the cold, immovable reality of what is. They lied because they are a liar. They manipulated you because they are a manipulator. When you internalize this, a profound psychological shift occurs. You stop trying to explain your feelings to them because you realize you're explaining empathy to a brick wall. You stop arguing because you realize you are fighting a ghost. Your silence is no longer a tactic you have to force. It becomes your natural default state. You have accepted their malice, and in doing so, you have made yourself completely immune to it. Which brings us to the kill switch. At the beginning of this documentary, I promised you one specific, silent micro-shift in your physical presence that instantly strips a manipulator of their power, triggers their evolutionary panic, and forces them to retreat. You now understand the architecture of the 12 behaviors. You understand the Blank Slate Protocol, Asynchronous pacing, and the Withheld Validation Matrix. The kill switch is the physical manifestation of all 12 behaviors executed simultaneously in a fraction of a second. It is the physical embodiment of the void. When a toxic person attacks, your body automatically enters the sympathetic nervous system's fight or flight response. Your shoulders hike up to protect your neck, your jaw clenches, you hold your breath. This physical bracing is a micro-signal to the predator that you recognize them as a threat. The kill switch is the parasympathetic drop. While maintaining the unblinking observation, you consciously, deliberately force your shoulders to drop. You completely relax your facial muscles. And you exhale slowly through your nose. You are weaponizing your own physiology. By physically relaxing in the face of their aggression, you are sending a devastating, undeniable message to their primal brain. I do not recognize you as a threat. You are nothing to me. When you drop your physical tension and withdraw your energy, you trigger their extinction burst. They will thrash, they will panic, they will try to pull you back into the chaos. Let them thrash. Let them scream into the void. You have become an immovable object. You are no longer supply. You are a psychological black hole. They will fear your silence, they will fear your apathy, and eventually they will flee from your presence to find easier prey. You have reclaimed your mind. Now, it is time to master it. If this documentary shifted your reality, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. We are building an army of minds immune to manipulation. Leave a comment below with the word void to signify you have initiated the Blank Slate Protocol, and share this video with one person who desperately needs to break their trauma bond today.